r/ask Reddit. What happened in school that still pisses you off when you think about it today? I was in the school finals of some general knowledge quiz competition. The question I was asked was, what is the collective noun for a group of whales? I answered confidently, a pod. The illiterate bloody teacher had a skull written on her answer card, refused to listen when I assured her it was indeed a pod. Her ignorance cost me the grand title and I was practically in tears, in front of the whole school, at the injustice of it. Everyone then labeled me as a bad loser. Will never forget it. Still seethe on it from time to time. It happened in 1985. If only it was in the era of the smartphone. Just whip that out and Google it and make the teacher look like a moron at it. My god, so much hate about cell phones, and but there's an encyclopedia. The point in my joke was that so many people have a cell phone ready for use in their pocket, lighting up people. I was in a pub quiz the other week and the quizmaster got a question wrong. I think it might have been about Pluto being considered a planet. I knew when I answered the question it was going to be a coin toss whether the QM thought Pluto was a planet or not and guessed that he would be right. But I guessed wrong and grumbled a little bit. Got my phone out just to show my teammates after the quiz finished. Not too audibly, but the quizmaster happened to be sat near me and came up all high and mighty and said that I should be in charge of the quiz if I think I'm so good at it. So annoying. A girl in 3 of my classes was allowed by the administration to have her cell phone during classes because her father was dying. I was aware of the situation since it was happening for weeks and she often had little breakdowns. One day, in first period, her phone vibrates while the teacher is talking. He disregards that fact that she's allowed to have her phone and demands she hand it over to him. I believe he said something along the lines of, "I'll read it and if it's not your mother then I'm keeping it." Her phone. For the rest of the class because it rang while I was talking. Well, the girl flips out, starts crying as soon as she sees her phone screen. She said no, she's leaving. This starts a standoff between the teacher and her. He ends up blocking the doorway while still demanding her phone. His logic was if he didn't know it was her mom texting her then he can't let her leave. At this point, she's inconsolable and everyone in the class is screaming at him to let her go. Like, duck your complex, dude. Let her go. And he's screaming back, "I'm in charge here." To the point the class made so much noise that security came in to see what was going on. Security tells the girl just go to the office. Her dad did die that day and she wasn't in school for a month. The teacher had a leave of absence as well and we had a sub the rest of the year. From then on, students were not allowed special circumstances for cell phones and teachers were not allowed to block students from leaving. The real kicker is this was intro to photography and most students were there because we had to take a mandatory elective. Duck you, Mr. M. You were a dong to that poor girl who only wanted to see her dad one more time. I'm mad just typing this out. What a massive control freak donghead. My elective class is super important. A teacher told me I couldn't keep a bottle of water in my locker because it could be vodka or something. I told her she could smell it and check. She said, "That's not my job and that I could just use the drinking fountain." I asked her if she would use the drinking fountain instead of her mug, the tap in the teacher's lounge. She wouldn't answer. Hi teacher, how can I help you? Teacher, I'm not able to let you have a water bottle. It might be vodka. Okay. What am I supposed to drink instead? Teacher, sir, I am not a water person so I don't know. I have to drink from the water fountain because you think my bottle might have vodka? Teacher, I don't know what that is. Okay. So are you going to drink from the water fountain instead of your mug or? Teacher, sir, I already told you that I am not a water person. You're refusing to hear me so I'm going to walk away. Edit. Original source. Unexpected support. A guy threw his cheat paper at me in an exam. The invigilator saw it but instead of throwing him out of the class he threw me and gave me an F in that exam. This is the most ridiculous thing I've heard today. Yeah, what's an invigilator? I had to pee, then I asked to go to the restroom. The substitute, full-time teacher for another class, said, "You don't have to pee, just sit down." After a bit more pleading and begging I just peed my pants. I was 8 and totally mortified. What made it worse is that the teacher told my parents that I should have spoken up earlier and accidents happen. I still think I should have peed on her desk. Something like this happened when I was in high school. The kid just pulled a garbage can to the corner and pissed in it. We had a pregnant girl in one of our classes and she needed to pee. She told the teacher and the teacher told her she should have kept her legs closed and she wouldn't need to pee so badly. She stood up, walked over to the door, peed in her pants in front of it, and walked out. He got fired because she had a medical reason for needing to have constant bathroom breaks. 10th grade class, relatively early in the semester, but getting a 90 so far. One assignment was to make a flash animation. There wasn't really a formal submission process, and students just had to show the teacher that the assignment was done. I was the first one to finish. I showed the teacher. He said good. I moved on to do other assignments. About a week later I got my updated class average, which dropped to 78 somehow. I talked to the teacher, who said he never saw my flash assignment. I argued that I was the first one done, that he even commented on it, and my friend was sitting right next to me when I showed it to. He was basically like nope, never saw it. Eventually got my average in that class back to mid-80s by the end of the semester, but the ducker should have had a better submission process than just show me it's done. Edit. My first RIP inbox moment. Not to add salt to the wound, but I had an 8th grade English teacher that was on the complete opposite of the spectrum. We had to turn in 4 papers through the year. That would account for 25% of our year-end grade. I turned in 1, and somehow the guy never asked me for the next 3 but still gave me credit. I did something like this a few times. Had a very scatterbrained teacher in 10th grade. Had to turn in a huge, 13 pages or so, research paper. He just asked everyone to bring it up at the same time. So I did what any self-respecting procrastinator would. I grabbed a friend and made conversation with said teacher while handing it in, but stood out of the way so others could hand in theirs and bury the one I handed him. Week or 2 later, he asks me to step out into the hall and says he can't find my paper. That's strange. I definitely handed it to you, Mr. P. I stood there and talked to you about whatever class-related topic it was. For a bit, I was terrified, expecting him to ask me for another copy, which didn't exist, but instead he responds with "That's right. I thought that was you, wasn't it? I guess I lost it along with other things he lost. Tell you what, it was my fault and you're a great student. I'll just give you a 95 on it. Next to highest grade in the class. Edit. I agree with most of you. This was a terrible thing to do, and very dishonest move on my part. It was some 7 years ago now. Definitely not the sort of thing I'd do at my current stage of life. My teacher lost my finals then made me retake them while making passive-aggressive comments about me trying to cheat. 2 weeks later she found my original final on her desk under a pile of papers. Edit. Whoa. Thanks so much for the support and love. Didn't realize this resonated with so many other people. Y'all are the best. I teach. I accidentally misplaced a final and was really unsure if it was me or the student. Thankfully I found it, but it changed how I handle exams. Now I make my students sign out when they turn in the exam, verifying they turned it in. It protects both of us. If I have the signature but not the exam, it's my fault and we work something out. I've never lost another exam, so it's never been needed, but I'm human and I know I'm capable of misplacing things. I'd hate to damage a student's grade because I ducked up. Had an economic teacher that was forced into retirement because he was constantly losing students' papers and handing out Fs for the papers he lost. When my friends and I heard he basically got fired, we all rejoiced and got drunk. Last year of primary school, I was being bullied on a daily basis. One kid stabbed me between the shoulder blades with a compass. Teacher, seeing the blood through the back of my shirt, declared that I'd done it myself to my mother ETA. Wow. You guys have made me realize how common this is. Thank you. I don't recall fighting back at all as some of you have asked, but I think I'd been so bullied into submission by that point that I felt it was useless. The kid that did it sadly passed away a couple of years ago. In some fate-laden way I am now a teacher and pride myself on being kinder to my students than my teacher was to me. Some teachers are amazing at overlooking bullied students, One of my best friends was bullied really badly in high school and none of the teachers thought it was worth their attention until she developed a severe eating disorder through the anxiety those little twats caused her. There's nothing more frustrating than seeking help through the channels the school tells you about and then being ignored completely. The amount of teachers that are trying to relive their glory days and make an effort to be extra sweet and nice to the popular kids is also insane. I get it. You had a shit high school experience and now you're in a position of power and can be friends with anyone. But it's as if they don't realize they're perpetuating the cycle, just creating more shitty high school memories for another generation. In the second grade, our class was walking in a single file line outside for recess. It had rained and was muddy and slick. The class bully, a heavy-set mean girl, was walking ahead of me. She slipped in the mud and fell on her ass. She jumped up and immediately pointed her finger at me. That bitch said I pushed her. I got detention for a few days and had to spend that recess with my head down on a desk in the teacher's office. I swore I didn't do it and no one believed me. Whoa, that was like 1989 or 1990 and yet still pisses me off. Don't worry, she probably got pregnant at 16 and now struggles to make ends meet while working 3 jobs to support her numerous shithead children who were fathered by 3 different men. The sad thing is, this more or less describes the majority of the beachy girls I went to school with. When I was 16, I started living by myself. One of the things that still pisses me off years later about the first year or so that I lived alone is that, even though my marks were actually improving at the time, there were still teachers who told me they liked me better when I lived with my parents. Yeah, please teacher, tell me more about how I should have moved back in with my abusive parents. I liked you more when you were quiet and submissive. That teacher. That teacher is the primary reason why I refused to do any science subjects in years 11 and 12. In my last year of junior school, I arrived to find everyone gossiping about 2 friends and I being in trouble for some reason. We'd been accused of bullying this kid. We had to apologize to him. We got called to the headmaster who blew his top. And our form teacher told us that she hoped we'd get bullied when we went to secondary school, most of which would have fine. But when we went to apologize, I didn't so much as even recognize him, let alone know him or bully him. He turned out to be a good guy, so at least I made a friend for the final 3 months of school. Even to this day I can't guess how this story originated. I once had to apologize to someone who was bullying me, because he said that I was bullying him. Fuck man. Rage inducing right there. We had this multicultural fair at my elementary school and the faculty wanted a Japanese kid to do origami at the Japanese station. I was the only kid that knew origami. I was, and still am, Filipino, so they had me pretend to be Japanese and do the paper cranes and frogs and shit. It was just ridiculous. If they did that now, shit would hit the fan. My CSPE teacher did that this year, that she was getting people to hold up their national flags and get the only 2 black, 1 Irish, 1 Tanzanian kids in the class to hold up the flag of Nigeria, which is even worse when you consider a big part of her job was teaching against racism. 9th grade, was loading onto the bus in summer school. A kid sat in a seat that a girl wanted. I told him not to worry about her. She proceeded to slap the shit out of me. As she was rearing back to slap me again, I pushed her away. At that exact time the driver gets on and sees me pushing her. We both go kicked out of summer school. I was only going so that I could graduate as a junior. She ducked up my whole plan for high school. I had my person and all my belongings searched on 4/20 simply because of who I was and I was acting lethargic. The a-hole vice principal opened my bag and said it smelled like marijuana. In the pocket where I kept my cologne, sent ISS, my home away from home, because they couldn't prove I was high. But they knew I was. Definitely didn't smoke. Knowing something like this was coming. Sent ISS, my home away from home. What? You got to go to space? You were one lucky kid. Just a typo. He forgot the second Dionysus. Was talking to the guidance counselor about how it was ridiculous to me that a single missed assignment would drop my grade by 20-30 points, regardless of its importance. She said just because something is wrong doesn't mean you should try to change it. Why the duck would a guidance counselor give that type of advice to a freshman in high school? I found that a lot of guidance counselors were just bitter people who never got to be teachers. Both my parents are teachers and they hate their respective guidance departments. Customer, they call it shell shock. It seems to only happen with guidance counselors. They used to make a big deal of it, but they just let it go now cause they always pay for whatever they break and they never bother anybody. Dante, well, why guidance counselors? Customer, well, if your job was as meaningless as theirs, wouldn't you go crazy too? Randall, come to think of it, my guidance counselor was kinda worthless. A couple weeks into my freshman year, I transferred into a more advanced science class. On my first day in the new class there is a quiz. I asked the teacher if I was exempt from the quiz. Since it was my first day, she said no. I did well, especially for not having been taught any of the material. Here's what bugged me. The final question on the test was what country is ticket from? Of course I got it wrong. The sentence doesn't even make sense. She wouldn't give me any clarification during the test, so once it was graded I asked what in the world she meant. Turns out ticket is her pet bird. Ticket. For one, capitalize the name of your pet. Also, that's not an appropriate test question. I told the teacher I had no idea that was her bird. She said, well, now that you know I'm talking about my bird, I'll give you another chance. What country is my bird from? I was stunned that she thought I was now equipped to answer this question. I wasn't in class to hear her reveal where her bird was from. I guessed something like Chile. She says wrong. It's Africa. Africa? That's not a country. I was so mad. She also arrogantly proclaimed every so often for the first few weeks if anyone spotted her making an error, they get an instant A for the year. I can't count how many times I busted her in class, but she never stuck to her word. Last of all, some random girls I didn't even know told the teacher I taught the bird swear words, and I got in trouble for that. I never said a word, much less swear words, to her bird. I'm actually fuming. Everything from my stories and other people's stories built up to just be popped by your post. Jesus Christ. I ducking hated teachers like this beach. I took a computer programming class in high school and we had network folders to store our work. One kid found my password on a slip of paper, open bracket, given passwords that we couldn't change, and was stealing my assignments and changing the name. I had been helping him through the class, but didn't think anything of it. Well, in programming it's very obvious if you steal someone's code since the odds of you having the same variable names and methods to solve problems would be rare. I got called into a meeting with a teacher and kid and she just started laying into us. She accused me of cheating, telling me she was going to fail me and report me for academic dishonesty, get me kicked out, and told me that I'd never make it in life and not doing anything blah blah blah. I was completely blindsided. I had no idea he was stealing my stuff and turning it in. I tried explaining that I had no idea what she was talking about. She kept telling me I was a liar and stupid and wouldn't be successful and just kept going on and finally said, never use me as a reference for anything. I'm now a very successful chemist in a very good company and still bitter that this teacher accused me of being a cheater and that I would never amount to anything because of it. This could have very simply been solved by a tech teacher. I assume there were both files so she would just have to check which file was made first. No? Either way, I always loved high school teachers who say that if they kick you out of the class you'll end up being a bum with no goals in life. Relax, you're a tech teacher. You're really not that important. You're never going to amount to anything. Teachers are usually projecting. They tend to be ridiculously insecure and hate their job. This one crazy ass teacher punished someone and treated him like a delinquent for the whole school year because this kid yawned at him. My Spanish teacher in high school would get upset with anyone that yawned in class. She thought it was extremely disrespectful and rude. Couple of kids got detention over it. She treated yawning as if you were projectiles shitting onto her desk. We had one of those too. She would freak the duck out if anyone yawned. I never understood it. In 6th grade we had to write an essay at the beginning of the school year if we wanted to be on flag duty. There were 3 6th graders who were in charge of going outside and running the flag up the pole every morning and taking it down at the end of the school day. I had just come to the school the year before, and it was a very tight-knit small school, and I was a sci-fi nerd who was decidedly not cool. I knew it then too, and overcompensated by trying way too hard. Which is the least cool thing you can do? I wrote an essay about how my father was in Vietnam and the flag reminded him of home. How my grandfathers had gone to Germany in the Pacific in World War II and what the flag meant. About my ancestors who fought under that flag and a different flag in the Civil War. And how 2 of my great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers had fought in the revolution to establish that flag. I wrote about how from 13 stars to 50, through challenges within and without, my family had served their country. Regardless, I wasn't selected. You win some, you lose some. So at the end of the year, we are graduating from 6th grade and moving to junior high. This kid, Andy, who is one of the ones who was on the flag crew and was one of the cool kids, walks up to me just before the presentation and says, "Hey, you're going to get a certificate for being on the flag crew. We were supposed to tell you the second week of school, but we didn't." As a kid who wanted to be a writer, I had spent the whole year thinking my persuasive essay wasn't good enough. But it was just this ducker not wanting me to be there when he and his friend went out and did the flag. Duck you, Andy. My stepfather was severely physically abusive and I got called to the guidance counselor's office often to explain the bruises. I would tell her what had happened. She'd call my mother. My mother would arrive, tell everyone I was a liar and that I bruised myself for attention. And the GC always bought it and sent me home. Eventually I just stopped telling her anything other than I was clumsy because the beatings were always worse when the school called my parents. Edit. Seriously. Thanks for the supportive words. I had no idea so many of us had shitty parents and shitty guidance counselors. And no, I never beat the shit out of him back. Didn't have to. He was in an accident at work that left him a drooling vegetable. Calm as a beach. My parents are abusive, calls parents to come in and takes their denial as gospel. Shittiest counselor ever. Seriously, that counselor had no business anywhere near a school. If a child alleges abuse in the home, the very first phone call by law is supposed to be to the police CPS, not the alleged abusers. Duck, this entire thread is making me so goddamn mad already, but your post had me screaming at my monitor. I feel you. My mom broke up with her ex-boyfriend about 4 years ago. I lived in a house with no working heat, air conditioning, or working water. Also an abusive drunk. He would always get into fights with my mom and she would scream my name for help and I would run down to her and she would hold me and scream and cry until he calmed down. I was 11 at the time it ended. It went like this practically every day for 4 years. I got told off by the next person down from headmaster for not turning up to a maths lesson because he thought I'd gone to a demonstration against the rise in university tuition fees. He was, however, perfectly okay with the fact that I didn't go to the demonstration and just couldn't be asked to turn up to the maths lesson. Other people who did go to the demonstration got suspended. The next person down from headmaster, the McMaster. It was easier than saying Dean Warden because nobody outside my school would know what the duck one of those is. I got detention for talking after someone talked to me. I didn't even reply and he didn't get punished. We don't even have similar voices. I had a good teacher in 10th grade who constantly told me to stop talking. I kept protesting that it seriously wasn't me. Eventually I told her, after class, to move me across the room and she'd see who it really was. She agreed and it worked. The very first day after moving she declared right in class, "I was wrong, it was never AFK tornado. I'm so sorry," and proceeded to crack down on the guilty parties. Good teacher. Very validating. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.